We're going to begin. Good evening. My name is Carol Whittington, and I am co-chair of the Health Committee for the National Coalition of 100 Black Women Incorporated, Dallas Metropolitan Chapter. Welcome, and thank you for joining us for the Bridging the Gap Autism Advocacy in Black Communities virtual event. Today's program is a powerful conversation centered on understanding autism, embracing neurodiversity, and turning awareness into action. We are honored to feature three dynamic speakers who will share their expertise, experiences, and valuable resources to educate and empower us all. Whether you are a parent, advocate, or community member, this conversation is an opportunity to listen, to learn, and to lead with practical ways to foster inclusion and meaningful change. Next, I'd like to go over the agenda. We'll have a session purpose. We'll introduce our speakers. We'll have presentations. We'll have a Q&A. And by the way, please put your questions in the chat. We'll have a wrap up, thank you, and call to action. Next, our session purpose. We want to highlight lived experiences, ensuring the narrative is shaped by autistic individuals. Share practical resources, educate, and reduce stigma to build a more inclusive society so that we can move beyond awareness to acceptance. Now, I'd like to introduce the president of the National Coalition of 100 Black Women Incorporated, Dallas Metropolitan Chapter, Dr. Katrina Pullum.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Bridging the Gap Autism Advocacy in Black Communities. I am Dr. Katrina Pullum, president of the National Coalition of 100 Black Women Incorporated, Dallas Metropolitan Chapter, and I'm honored to open tonight's webinar. Thank you for being here because showing up for this conversation is an act of advocacy all by itself. Tonight is about truth, access, and action. In far too many Black families, autism is still misunderstood, delayed in diagnosis, or dismissed altogether. Too often, parents are navigating confusion, stigma, and systems that were not built with cultural understanding in mind. And when support comes late, our children pay the price academically, socially, emotionally, and developmentally. But when we bridge the gap with education, early intervention, and strong community support, we change outcomes, we change the trajectory, we change lives. So tonight, you can expect a community-centered conversation grounded in real experiences, professional expertise, and practical resources. I encourage you to take notes, ask questions, and share this information with your network. Every informed person becomes a bridge for someone else. To our speakers and our partners, thank you for lending your expertise and your heart to this work. To every parent, caregiver, educator, clinician, and community advocate on the call tonight, thank you for learning and engaging. So let's move forward together with compassion and clarity, because when our community understands autism, our children are supported sooner, our families are strengthened, and our future becomes brighter. Welcome to Bridging the Gap. And now I turn it over to Madam Chair Charlene Powell.
Good evening. It is my pleasure to introduce our speakers for this evening. Alicia Wilson. Alicia is the DCBA supervisor of MetroCare Center for Children with Autism, with more than 10 years of experience supporting children with autism between the ages of 2 through 12. Alicia is deeply passionate about autism awareness, advocacy, and empowering families as they navigate from a child's diagnosis. Alicia is dedicated to fostering understanding and equipping caregivers with practical tools to support meaningful progress in their children's lives. Carl Frizzell. Dr. Carl Frizzell is a late diagnosed autistic self-advocate, award-winning educator, and consultant with over 10 years of clinical and academic experience. After earning his Master of Science in Physician-Assisted Studies from the University of Alabama at Birmingham, Dr. Frizzell, and that was in, Doctor of Medical Science from the University of Lynchburg. Dr. Frizzell has contributed to multiple specialties, including medical oncology, occupational medicine, and psychiatry. His autism diagnosis in 2023 transformed his path, leading him to focus on dismantling ableist healthcare systems and building autism acceptance through joy-centered advocacy and community-driven knowledge production. And our third speaker is Henry Amoloja. Henry is a Dallas-based sensory-friendly barber and an innovator dedicated to creating inclusive grooming experiences for children with special needs. He is the creator of the Weighted Cape, a specialized hair-cutting cape designed with gentle, calming pressure to help sensory sensitivities. As the founder of Trimmings, a sensory-friendly haircutting space, Henry has helped countless children build tolerance during grooming sessions. In the future, Henry will share insights on how the skills developed through building haircut tolerance can positively transfer to other areas of their daily lives. And with that, I will turn it over to our speakers.
There we go. Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Alicia. As she mentioned, I'm a behavior analyst at MetroCare. I work at the Center for Children with Autism there. Tonight, I'll be talking a little bit about some supports that you can utilize with individuals with autism. And then at the end of my presentation, I do have a list of resources. So let's start off with a general overview of autism and ABA. So some of the core symptoms of autism or autism spectrum disorder include difficulty with verbal and nonverbal communication, difficulties with social interaction, and then also you'll see a presence of repetitive behaviors or restricted interests. These symptoms present differently for each person. Not everyone is exactly the same. So if you've ever heard the saying, if you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism. Everyone struggles differently. Some people struggle more with communication. Some struggle with eye contact. Some don't struggle with eye contact. Some are great at socialization. It's just different from person to person, but it also changes throughout their lifespan. And then moving on to ABA or applied behavior analysis. So this is a type of therapy that we provide at our autism clinics at MetroCare. It's based on the science that focuses on analyzing behaviors, and then we develop and implement different interventions in order to change those behaviors. We also use ABA to teach important skills such as teeth brushing or communication or social skills. We also, during the course of treatment, we also evaluate the effectiveness of those interventions. And then we go back to the drawing board if we need to try something different. So it's constantly evolving and it's individualized for each particular person that we're working with, as well as their family. Before I get into teaching and things like that, I do want to speak on some barriers for autism diagnosis. Some people don't know this, but autism can be reliably diagnosed as early as 2 years old. However, the average age of diagnosis in the United States across all ethnicities is about 4. And so 4 is still a pretty good age to catch it, right? You can still make progress no matter what. However, the earlier you catch it, the the earlier you are able to start your interventions to change those behaviors and teach those necessary skills that our kids need to be successful. So we're aiming for early diagnosis and early intervention always. There are some different barriers. Of course, reduced access to medical care. There's long wait lists for evaluation and diagnosis. That's something that we encounter with our families at our autism clinics. Most of our population that we serve have Medicaid as their insurance. And so with getting a diagnosis with Medicaid, there's very long wait lists, sometimes 6 to 12 months. There could also be personal bias as well as misdiagnosis. Maybe it was diagnosed as something else instead of what it actually is. And then just the pressures and the intricacies of navigating the healthcare system as well. But as I said, early diagnosis leads to early intervention, which gives us the best possible outcomes, which is what we want for the individuals that we're supporting. Okay. So, getting into autism and ABA in the Black community, this is a really necessary topic of conversation. I'm so excited to talk about it, actually. I was excited to research it as well. There's different factors that need to be considered when we're teaching and supporting an individual with autism. So, I'm going to start with the social skills aspect. So, something that's really interesting is that social communication deficits are a major part of an autism diagnosis. And social communication is also a major part of Black culture, right? We socialize and we gather in groups and we have family reunions and barbecues and events and things like that. That's how we form bonds and relationships with each other. And so we want our individuals that we're supporting to be able to participate in those things, right? So there's certain factors that need to be considered when we're teaching social skills, not just greeting or saying your name or maybe your age. There's other things that are definitely a factor in the Black community. So there's things like, excuse me, there's things like the tone of voice that you use, the audience that you're speaking to. You speak to grandma and grandpa a lot differently than you speak to your friends that are across the street, right? The environment that you're in when you're speaking to other people, whether that's at school or at work or at home, the way that you're going to speak sounds different. In some environments, you'll use slang, in other environments, you won't. And this isn't necessarily saying that the individuals that we are supporting need to be able to do these things. It's great if they do, it's great if they want to. Not that they need to be able to, but just that they're able to navigate it, right? Do you know what different slang words mean? Do you know how people greet each other in the environment that you're in? And so that way they are able to be a little less stigmatized, right? Able to blend in a little bit more and feel a little bit more like they belong. And then moving on to another area where this can be a factor is daily living skills. We also call these adaptive living skills or activities of daily living. ABA can be used to teach all of these things, the social and the daily living skills. When it comes to the daily living skills, however, what I'm thinking about is things like hair care and skin care and safety skills for our individuals, right? And so um, things like hair care and skincare mostly. So thinking about those two things, there are different products that we can use, right? There's a whole store full of products for our hair and our skin. And what we need to be thinking about with our individuals is what those things smell like or what they feel like. Do they like products that are a little more oily or do they not? Do they like a certain fragrance more than another fragrance, or do they prefer something that has no fragrance at all? Individuals with autism do experience hypersensitivities to things like smell and touch. And so we want to make sure that we're factoring in those things when we're helping them navigate these types of areas of their life, right? This should be based on their individual preference as well. So what do you want your hair to look like? What do you want your skin to feel like? What do you want it to smell like? We want them to be able to speak up and advocate for themselves in those moments so that we can involve them in that process. And then, especially when it comes to hair, black hair is amazing, right? It's beautiful. There's so many different ways that you can wear it, and there's so many different ways that there's so many different things that you can do with it. But we'd also want to focus our attention on this with the individual's preference as well. So Do they want something that's a little easier to maintain? Do they want to not have to do their hair every day? Do they like having a wash day or would prefer not to have one? And then we can kind of modify what we're doing based on that. And so maybe they decide to lock their hair, or maybe they decide to get mini twists or a wash and go or something like that, right? Wherever we can involve their preference and help them advocate for themselves, we want to do that because we want them to feel good about themselves. And then with safety skills, so this can be the common things that we hear in media, right? About elopement and wandering. And of course, first responders and police officers being aware and being trained on how to recognize and respond to individuals with autism. But then there's also the other side of it, which is you can't tell that someone has autism just by looking at them. And so we know that, in the media, there's all kinds of conversations around Black culture, Black people, and first responders, such as police officers, right? And so we need to make sure we're doing whatever we can possible to keep our children safe, whether that's equipping them with certain ID cards that they have in their wallet, or putting something on the car, or something like that to alert someone that this is an individual with autism and they may respond unexpectedly, let's say. So the cool thing about ABA is that it can be used to teach all of these skills. We teach all of these things, right? And the applied element of ABA, which essentially means that we're developing things that specifically apply to that individual in their real life. That's how we address what these looks like in Black culture. So what's important here is that caregivers and practitioners or providers, they need to be aware of what these things look like in order to teach them correctly, right? We don't want to teach something to a Black individual that really has nothing to do with what their life looks like in real life. So as their caregiver, as their support system, it's important to, in these moments, make sure you're speaking up to say, hey, that step of hair care doesn't actually match what's happening in real life. Can we maybe make some modifications so that it better fits what's going on at home or wherever they are? Okay, getting a little bit more into teaching skills, it's important to ask certain questions, right, when we're deciding what to teach. We need to figure out where they're going to need this skill, how often they'll be able to practice it. That one's important because we want to make sure that we're spending the most amount of time on a skill that they will need often. So if this individual is in school often, maybe in a general education setting, if they participate in extracurricular activities, we want to teach them skills that help them be successful in those environments, since that's where they're spending most of their time. And then another important one to ask yourself is, what does it look like when other people do it? I love this question. It's a very important question, especially when you're working with maybe children, teens, young adults, kind of, right? The way that I introduce myself to someone is a lot different than the way my 18-year-old niece introduces herself to people, right? And so maybe it's not what I would do, but I need to be teaching what they would do in that situation, what their peers do in those situations, in order to help them feel like they really belong. Excuse me. Okay. I do have a quick example of a hair care, right? When we're talking about teaching hair care, some things that we would consider. So in an ABA therapy session, we would practice these hair care steps at home, whatever that looks like. Sorry, not practice them at home. We would practice the steps in an ABA therapy session and then provide the steps to the caregiver to practice those exact same steps at home. Sometimes you can do this with like a visual, it's like a picture, and it shows step by step what each step of their hair care routine looks like. We'd go over it with them maybe in an ABA therapy session, and then we'd sit at home with the parent or the caregiver, and then they would be able to use those steps in real life at home. In-home ABA is a great thing for sure, but I'm assuming something like hair care wouldn't happen like in real life in a session. We always want to make sure we're aiming for independence as much as possible all of the time. So we teach using modeling and visuals. We want to make sure that they're able to do these things on their own, as many things as possible on their own, just because that helps them feel empowered, right? When I can do something for myself, that helps me feel a lot more empowered than someone having to do everything for me. And then visiting a hair store in order to choose hair care products. Again, considering fragrances and textures and consistencies. Also arranging consultations with sensory-friendly hairstylists or just doing some research online about some ways to care for hair in a sensory-friendly way. I know one thing, when I was coming up, the whole spray bottle mist thing was not a thing. I was left on my own, right, with just some hair grease and a comb. So great that that's now something that's been incorporated into our culture. And so that's a way that you can be a little bit more sensory friendly with our friends who are having a hard time with those sensory sensitivities. And then again, choosing a style based on their preference or the ease of maintaining it, things like that. All right. And then these last slides are just some resources I have to share. Some of them I have personal experience with, some just found through colleagues and things like that. So I'll mention a few of these, but I won't go over all of them. One big one, Supernova Parenting is one of my favorite ones. She's a mom with autism and ADHD, raising daughters who also have autism and ADHD. So I think that's really cool. She has a whole kind of parenting boot camp workshop type design. And so she offers these different classes. She teaches a lot of things that we teach in ABA therapy. I think that's why I relate to her really well. It's kind of the same principles, just explained a little bit more on a mentalistic way, whereas I would be more behavioral. Another one is there's another behavior analyst, actually. I think she's based in Georgia, and she is on a mission to make visuals or pictures of our kids for them to look like them, right? So when I'm making visuals for my kids, I'm always aiming to find ones that look like them, of course, but she's creating ones on her own with her Etsy shop. And so that's a great way to have things that look like our individuals so that they can feel a little bit more related to the pictures that we're using to teach them. Of course, I have to mention MetroCare because that's where I work, right? MetroCare is the largest provider of mental health and disability services, developmental disability services in North Texas. They offer all kinds of programs and truly serve from birth to death. There's literally something for everyone at all stages of life. That's one of the things I love about MetroCare. Um, and then one last thing I wanted to mention is the Autism Society of Texas. I won't go too much into what that is. The information's on the screen if you need it. I do want to talk about this expo that's coming up. It's located in Plano on May 30th. It's a free event for caregivers and families, kind of a one-stop shop where they can have all of their services, not have access to resources all in one place, right? So you can meet providers of ABA therapy, occupational therapy, physical therapy, feeding therapy. Those are all things that our individuals need. Adaptive sports and homeschoolings and things like that. Again, it's free. It's just in Plano. Again, on May 30th. Highly recommend that. And then last but not least, never underestimate the power of social media. I know that my algorithm is probably a little biased because I do this for a living. So I have a lot of content on my social media pertaining to autism and things like that. Content creation is on the rise, right? So there are people vlogging real life autism content. And I think it's really important for caregivers to be aware of, just because I know that this can feel a little lonely, a little isolating. You can't spend a lot of time around people. Your entire life is dedicated to helping this individual, right? And so I think that following different content creators who are vlogging what meltdowns look like for them or what trips to amusement parks look like, what hair care routines in the morning look like are a great idea. And so I've listed a couple here, but I have a lot more. If anyone would like this resource list, I'm happy to send it to you. My email is on this slide right here. Shoot me an email. I'd be happy to share this resource list with you. And I thank you all so much.
Thank you so much, Alicia. That was wonderful. We will now transition to our next speaker, Dr. Carl Frizzell.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Dr. Carl Frizzell, and tonight I want to talk to you about joy. Specifically, joy as a radical act of resistance for Black autistic people in a community like ours. Here's more information about me. I use identity first language, meaning I prefer autistic person rather than saying person with autism. And I want to briefly explain why that distinction matters. Based on my medical training, person first language was developed to separate people from what medicine views as pathology, a disorder or deficit, something that needs to be cured. But autism has been a part of me my whole life. It's not something that's separate from me. It is woven into every part of my story, my thinking, and my experience. That said, I deeply respect anyone who prefers person first language. That is your story and your choice. We all can define our own narratives. Furthermore, I'm an awesomely awkward Black autistic man who is a PhD candidate in change leadership from Holmes County, Mississippi, also known as Uncle Tonio by my nephew. I love baking bundt cakes, watching anime, playing video games, and caring for my houseplants. I received an ADHD diagnosis at age 28 when I was in PA school, and I hid that diagnosis because as a Black man in medical training, I did not want another strike against my back. Then in December 2023, at age 37, I was professionally diagnosed as autistic, and that diagnosis changed everything. I finally understood myself, and I refused to hide anymore. To ground our conversation, let's define a couple of key terms. Neurotypical refers to individuals whose brains, functions, and behaviors align with what society considers typical development. Neurodivergent refers to individuals whose brain processes information differently, not incorrectly, just differently. Autism and other examples of neurodivergence are listed on this slide. And when we talk about neurodiversity, we mean a full spectrum of brain differences represented in a group, which includes both neurotypical people and neurodivergent people. This brings up a very important distinction worth addressing directly. We have all heard someone say, oh, everyone's a little on the spectrum. And while it is true that everyone exists on the spectrum of neurodiversity, that does not mean that everyone is neurodivergent. Everyone is neurologically unique, yes, but neurodivergent individuals like autistic people experience brain differences that significantly impact the way they navigate a world that was largely not designed for them. Saying everyone is on the spectrum, while perhaps well-intentioned, can minimize and erase those very real experiences. Specificity and context matters. And we cannot talk about Black autistic experiences without talking about intersectionality. Intersectionality is a term coined by Black feminist legal scholar Kimberly Crenshaw in 1989, and it is simply and powerfully means that we are many things at once, and all those things impact us simultaneously. Being Black and autistic is not two separate experiences. They are one lived reality. And that reality means navigating racism, ableism, sexism, other types of prejudice and discrimination, and the relentless pressure to mask who we are, all at the same time. These compounded identities do not just add to our challenges, they multiply them. And until we understand that, we cannot truly support Black autistic people. That brings me to a critical question. Whose stories get told? Autism research has a problem. Historically, it has been built on a deficit model, focusing on what is wrong, what needs to be fixed, what needs to be cured. And the Black autistic experiences, they have been largely invisible in their research together. Our stories have been overlooked, our voices excluded, our communities treated as an afterthought in spaces that are supposed to serve us. But here's what we know. When communities do not control their narratives, those narratives are weaponized against them. That is why community-controlled narratives are not just important, they are essential. We deserve research that sees us fully, that centers us completely, that is built for us, with us, and for us, not someday, now. The data tells a sobering story. Black autistic children have significantly fewer autistic resources available to them than their white peers across the United States. They are also significantly more likely to have co-occurring neurodivergent conditions. You can see the percentages on the slide. And here is where it gets particularly troubling. Black children are far more likely to receive a disruptive behavior disorder diagnosis than ADHD diagnosis compared to white children. Why does that matter? Because children diagnosed with disruptive behavior disorders receive fewer treatments and fewer accommodations than those diagnosed with ADHD. This is not accidental. These are consequences of a system that was never built to see us fully, to support us completely, or to serve us equitably. This system was not built to see us, so we must see ourselves. And here is something we must never forget. Black autistic children become Black autistic adults. Yet our systems, our research, our support structures largely stop paying attention after childhood. That invisibility does not disappear, it compounds. Being Black and autistic means navigating multiple forms of marginalization simultaneously in medicine, in education, in professional spaces. And there's a unique burden in having to constantly prove your competence while navigating neurodivergence at the same time. I know this personally as a late diagnosed Black autistic man. Months before my diagnosis, that complexity brought me to a place where I said out loud, I'm a Black man and my life does not matter. Because people consistently perceive my communication style as difficult and aggressive. And what made it more painful, that the perception came from people who look like me, who share my race and or gender. This is what undiagnosed, unsupported neurodivergence looks like when it intersects with anti-Blackness and systemic erasure. As I often say, they don't just question my autism, they question my humanity. But I'm here today, having gone from that moment to proudly state that my differences do not mean deficits. That transformation is exactly why I do this work, because Black autistic lives do matter. And if Black autistic lives matter, then Black autistic voices must lead. For too long, other people have told our stories. They have defined what autism looks like in Black communities. They have built the research, the frameworks, and the narratives without ever truly centering us. And that has to change. Black autistic voices must lead conversation about Black autistic experiences, not as subjects, not as data points, but as experts on our own lives. We are building knowledge infrastructures controlled by us and for us, spaces where Black autistic perspectives are not an afterthought, they are the foundation. Our stories belong to us, our future belongs to us, and we are no longer waiting for permission to tell our truth. And when communities control our own knowledge, our own narratives, our own stories, something powerful happens. We discover joy. Not that kind of joy that ignores our struggles, but that kind that defies them. For too long, Black autistic people have been handed survivor narratives, stories about enduring, about overcoming, about making it despite the odds. But joy-centered advocacy says something different. It says we deserve more than survival. We deserve to celebrate who we are, fully and unapologetically. Because in spaces designed to pathologize us, joy is not passive. Joy is political. Joy is resistance. And this message I give to myself every single day. My joy is collective. I embrace and love all parts of me despite society's narratives. And I want you to claim that for yourself as well. So where do we go from here? Where is our call to action? Connect with Black autistic communities, not to speak for them, but to stand with them and to amplify their voices. Challenge deficit-based narratives whenever you encounter them, in your workplace, in your classroom, in your clinical space, in your home. And build spaces where Black autistic joy is not just tolerated, it is celebrated, it is protected. Because here's what I need you to leave with this message today. Your existence is revolutionary, your joy is resistance, your future is yours to define. Not society's definition, not medicine's definition, not anyone else's definition, yours. So what does this look like in practice? What do we actually do? First, we celebrate, we do not pathologize. Use strengths-based language every time you get a chance. For example, instead of saying that a young Black boy has a fixation, say that he has a deep passionate interest. Small shift in language create enormous shifts in how we see and value our community. Second, center Black autistic voices. Amplify community-led research and advocacy. If a Black autistic person is not leading the conversation, ask why. Third, create safe spaces rooted in cultural humility and joy, not spaces that simply tolerate difference, spaces that celebrate it. Fourth, challenge erasure. Advocate for representation in academic and professional spaces. Our presence in the rooms are not optional, it is necessary. Fifth, build community. Move from solitude to solidarity because our stories are our strength. And six, listen differently. Pay attention to what is being communicated by the autistic person, not how it's communicated. The message always matter more than delivery. Again, I say the message always matter more than delivery. These are not suggestions. These are acts of resistance. These are acts of joy. Now let us get to work. Before I leave tonight, I want to take a moment to acknowledge some very special Black women. On the left is Dr. Sheena D. Brown, who is also a late diagnosed autistic person. We both experienced similar outcomes in the workplace, and she encouraged me to seek out my official autism diagnosis. And because of that one conversation, we now speak together internationally about neurodivergent and autism acceptance in medical education. Dr. Brown, thank you for seeing me before I can fully see myself. On the right is my dear sister Portia, who's in the audience today. My big sister has always been 10 toes down with me since I was little. When I felt most alone during my hardest season of my life, like recently when I lost my home in a fire this past January, she kept showing up and reminding me that I was not alone. Portia, I love you more than words can say. And finally, to the National Coalition of 100 Black Women, Dallas Metro Chapter. Black women have always led the way in advocacy, justice, and community building. This work stands on your shoulders, and I'm deeply honored to be in this space with you tonight. Thank you, Black women, for everything. And if you'd like to stay connected, please reach out to me via my email, which is on the slide, or you can scan the QR code for more information about the work I do. And I would love to continue this conversation with you. Thank you so much.
Wow. Thank you so much, Dr. Frizzell. And we will now transition to the next speaker, Henry Tribe.
You guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. So thank you, Dr. Carl, for your presentation. That was amazing, actually. And Miss Alicia, thank you so much. Even if I'm one of the speakers, I actually learned a lot from your presentations. So thank you so much for that. But without further ado, I'm Henry Tribes. I'm a sensory-friendly barber here in Dallas, Texas. I've been a barber for 10 years. I am originally Nigerian, but I started my barbering career in Minnesota, and then I think I was a barber in DC for about 2 years, and then now I'm here in Dallas. I moved here in 2023 with my wife and my two beautiful kids. And this whole journey started when I invented a product called the Weighted Cape in 2024, I believe it was. So I was just a standard barber in 2024, and I was just always trying to find ways to improve the client experience. So I thought, like, why hasn't anybody decided to put or to integrate the concept of a weighted blanket into a traditional haircutting cape? So I thought to myself, this thing definitely has to exist. Like, there's just no way it doesn't. So after going down the rabbit hole on Amazon, Google, and all the things, right, I discovered, oh my God, nobody has done this. Like, I got to do it. So I took the weighted blanket I had at the house to the local seamstress, and she was able to like carve out like the first version of the weighted cape for me, and I tried it on my clients and they absolutely loved it. Now bear in mind, at this point I didn't know a lot about autism, about neurodiversity, about sensory sensitivities, or any of these things, right? For me it was just something I thought was cool and would be comfortable for my clients as, you know, a barber. Um so that summer of 2024 launched the weighted cape, and immediately the neurodivergent community, I mean, they let me know that, hey, like, no, what you created is great for your typical clients, but this could be life changing for neurodivergent kids who struggle with haircuts. So like, as somebody who didn't really know much about autism and neurodiversity and the things, I did my research. I went down the rabbit hole. I joined every autism specific Facebook page you can imagine. And then I got certified with this company, this nonprofit that goes around certifying barbers like me to provide neuro affirming services. They're called Sensory Safe Solutions. So after taking that course, um, it definitely laid the foundation for me as far as like learning, you know, like language, like Dr. Carl said, you know, how to use the right language, how to even you know, all the preliminary stuff like the questionnaire, having them fill out a questionnaire so you can understand the kids' triggers, antecedents, and all the things. And but I still didn't feel confident enough to take my first sensory sensitive client. So I decided to reach out to other sensory friendly barbers and stylists that I found on the internet, had phone calls with them. I met this lady in Houston named Jelly Robinson. She's been doing it for 10 years. She's incredible. And, you know, hours and hours of phone calls, hours and hours on the phone with Jelly, definitely, I felt like definitely gave me that confidence to take my first client. Now, the first video I'm going to play for you guys is that first client that I took. But this was about, I would say, 6 months after my first session with him, right? So it was like a full circle moment because what happened was, well, I'm not going to say his name, but what happened was he gave me that confidence that I needed, right, to be able to go full force with this because I was still battling imposter syndrome. I didn't feel like I knew enough. I felt like, like I'm just a regular barber. Like I don't know how to work with kids with special needs, but, he gave me that confidence that I needed. And then 6 months later, um his video was the first video I had that went viral. I think this video did 50 million views across TikTok, Facebook, Instagram. So it was a full circle moment because in that video I was actually reflective, thanking him for giving me that stroke of confidence that I needed to take my first sensory client. So anyways, I'm gonna go ahead and share this video with you just to give you guys some context. Let's see here. And please let me know if you can see my screen. 1 second here. 1 second, guys. All right, please let me know if you can see my screen. There we go. All right, 1 second. All right, let me know if you can see my screen. Today I'll be doing a sensory haircut on my 15-year-old client on the spectrum, Jabari. This is me prepping the 4-pound weighted cape for Jabari. The extra weights provide soothing sensory input for clients, especially for those who are neurodivergent. I have a firm belief that everybody deserves a fresh cut, and Jabari is no different. It's amazing to see how far he's come from the first time he came to me when he almost eloped to now trusting me fully and just being comfortable with me. But I do notice he's getting a little fidgety, so I pull out my sensory box to see if there's anything in there that he might like. I just want him to have something in his hands to keep him occupied while he's getting his haircut. And Jabari's going deep in the bag. He's touching everything. He's trying to see what he likes. I know this caterpillar thing is usually a huge hit. And I try to take the box away. Jabari said, nah, I'm gonna need this right here. So we got a winner, this little green ball right here. And look how ecstatic my guy is, man. That's all he needed. He just needed to keep his hands occupied, and now he's in a way better mood, and now I can go ahead and get my boy right. Fun fact, Jabari's the first sensory friendly haircut I ever had. I remember being mad nervous, and Jabari almost eloped on me, but he kept it together. It was a success, and he gave me that stroke of confidence I needed to go ahead with this journey that I'm on of servicing neurodivergent individuals. So thank you, Jabari, for giving me that opportunity, and I'm proud to be a barber. Today I'll be doing. All right. All right. I hope you guys were able to see that, and hopefully you heard it as well. Okay, let's see here. Can you guys hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Okay. And could you guys hear the video? Okay, awesome. So just to give you guys a timeline, so February 2024, I invented the weighted cape, launched it summer 2024. December 2024 was my first official sensory-friendly haircut session, which was with, as you guys just saw in the video, Jabari. 6 months later, that exact video went viral and did 50 million views across all social media platforms. So at the point that video went viral, I was probably doing 5 to 10 sessions a month. And now we've scaled that up to about 80 to 100 sessions a month. So just to give you guys context, that video was literally just 9, 10 months ago. And since then, so much have changed. We've been able to start a GoFundMe because so many people wanted to be able to donate to the cause and support these families with the sensory friendly haircuts. And I think in about 6 months, we were able to get 4,000 donations. And with such incredible community support, we were able to, hire more people and expand to a bigger space named Trimmy's, which is in Richardson, which is where I currently am. And I can't wait to show you guys the whole space as well. But it's just been an incredible journey. And I think the pivotal moment in this journey happened, I would say, 4 months ago, December 2025, when I had a phone call with my mom. And just her perspective on this new journey that her son was on was what really helped me connect the dots. And I'm just going to show you guys the video. That's going to be the next video I'm going to share, um, which will be me just kind of reflecting on that talk that I had. So, 1 second here. I'm going to share my screen again. All right, here we go. Okay, come on. You know, it's funny. Recently, I had my mom tell me that she had a revelation from God. She's a devoted Christian who is a Yoruba woman, and she said that God told her that I, as a sensory-friendly barber, will have the power of healing for the kids that I service. And I told her, I'm like, Mom, these kids don't need to be healed from anything. Like, they just happen to have to navigate a world that wasn't designed for them. But then I thought about it. I'm like, but what if healing wasn't in a literal sense, right? What if it's healing from past trauma? What if it's healing from having to feel included? What if it's healing from not having individuals or businesses or service providers who have your best interest in mind? What if it's healing from family members who didn't understand what it's like to have special needs or to care for somebody with special needs? What if it's healing from schools that weren't designed for kids with special needs? What if it's healing from every day having to look in the mirror knowing that you're gonna have to navigate through all these loopholes and these things that wasn't designed for your kids? What if me as a barber can plant that seed of hope in parents and in these individuals, that maybe there are individuals out there who care, who genuinely want to support their kids, who genuinely want to see their kids grow, and who just want them to look good and be healthy and care more about their grooming? What if I could play a small part in the healing of these kids from terrible haircuts? What if I could play a small part in the healing of these kids just having that sense of pride and confidence and going out there in the world knowing that, hey, my barber was able to give me a fresh haircut and he was able to instill that little bit of confidence and pride and joy in me, and now I can go out there and face the world knowing that there are individuals out there who exist who genuinely care. What if I could heal the world with bubble parties? You know what's all right. All right, I hope you guys were able to see and hear that video. So if you look at the progression of how everything happened, right? It's I invented a product and then I found out that there's a need for a certain community. So I went all in serving that community because to me it felt disingenuous, um, branding and marketing a product to a community that you're not educated on or a community you're not serving, right? So I went all in on it, and starting this year, like I said, we were able to do a GoFundMe in which we got 4,000 donations. So every single sensory-friendly haircut we do this year is totally free and already paid for. And not only are we offering free haircuts, but we were also able to drastically improve the experience and the space in which we do the haircuts out of, which leads me to my last video, which is a video of the new space we're in, all the premise. And let me share my video with you guys one more time, or my screen with you guys one more time. Okay, there we go.
Become a buzzword, a slogan we inclusion has become a buzzword, a slogan we repeat until it sounds like progress. But what we often mean by inclusion is that something was built without you in mind, and now we are trying to make you fit inside it. We add ramps to staircases. We soften the edges of spaces that were never meant for certain bodies, certain minds, certain individuals, and we call that belonging. But belonging does not require translation. It does not need accommodation when something is already shaped and designed for you. Belonging should feel like moving with the current, not fighting against it. You do not need to feel included in your own home, or your mother's house, or your grandmother's kitchen. Spaces made for you never announce it. They simply hold you, like a pair of gloves that fit effortlessly. That is the difference. We are not building something for you to feel included. We are building it for you. Keyword, you. So you do not have to ask to belong. You do not need to be grateful for access. You do not need to feel like a guest. You only have to do two things: show up and be you in your purest form. Welcome to Trimmies.
His name is Trimmy Trimmy. He's always with me. If
All right. I hope you guys were able to see and hear that video as well. But yeah, so our mission is very clear, right? Our mission is to make this service accessible to families globally. So we fully plan on expanding beyond Dallas, beyond Texas, beyond the United States, and all over the globe. We feel like this is such a huge need, but unfortunately, there's not enough service providers. There's not enough barbers or stylists who are educated on this need to serve the neurodivergent community with, fresh haircuts and just better hair care in general. So I am also on the board. I'm a co-secretary of a nonprofit called Sensory Society. We're a network of sensory-friendly barbers and stylists across the country, and we also teach classes at barber and beauty shows across the country. We actually have one at Premiere in Orlando in May. So the nonprofit also spans way beyond just barbers and stylists. There's BCBAs, there's occupational therapists, there's speech therapists, there's all these things and all these resources. So now we're able to better serve our clients. We had a client today who said that when she found out her son was diagnosed, the father left because he didn't want to take care of a child with special needs. So now I have the resources in my pocket to be able to give this single mom to say, hey, I have a speech therapist who does really good work in North Texas. I know of a food therapist in, North Texas who does really good work. So just being able to provide, I guess, like a holistic experience that goes way beyond just a haircut and hair care, but just anything that has to do with, activities of daily living or just a better quality of life is what I aim to do. So I tell people, I'm like, at Trimmies, we really care more about like the physical, emotional, and sensory well-being of the child, and then a fresh haircut is just a byproduct of that. So if you want to connect with me or with our mission, you can follow us at The Way to Cape on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and all the social media platforms. My personal social media is at Henry Tribes, and our website is thewaytocape.com, or for this space, it's trimmies.com, TRIMMYS.com. So if you have any questions, please let me know. Thank you so much for having me, National Coalition of 100 Black Women. I'm so honored. I don't even know what to say. I don't know how you guys found me, but you did, and I'm here, and I'm glad that I'm able to have the platform to be able to spread the gospel. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much to all three speakers. That was fantastic. Now we're going to transition to our Q&A.
Yes, thank you all so much for your work in advocacy and autism awareness and just the language and just the barriers around that just in our community. Henry, to answer your question, I stalk you on TikTok and that's how we found you. So thank you for being here tonight. Um, without further ado, I'm Twisana Lewis and I'll be facilitating our Q&A. So the first question is for Miss Alicia Wilson. Is there an age cutoff for children to receive ABA therapy? Um, that's a great question. Okay, so is there an age cutoff? Yes, yes and no, right? I believe, don't quote me, but I believe access to a lot of services stops at 26, I believe. Like I think they have to like leave the school system and things like that. It's either 21 or 26. I think it's 26. So that would be what might be considered a cutoff. As in you wouldn't necessarily have access to a provider who would work with your child one-on-one or with your individual one-on-one or anything like that. I know of ABA clinics who serve all the way up to age like 17 or 18 that like actually do clinic, but I believe a lot of services fade out around age 26.
Okay, thank you. And I have another question for you, Miss
Okay.
Alicia. Is there an equivalent therapy for ABA for late diagnosed autistic adults?
Yes. So I saw someone said cognitive behavior therapy. I think that would be a good option as well. I think my answer to this question is a little bit more broad, right? ABA therapy as a therapy um is like something provided by someone, right? But you can implement behaviors of a, sorry, you can implement like principles or practices. There we go. You can implement practices of ABA all the time. One of the things that I love to tell people is the behavioral principles that I'm functioning with are present literally everywhere. You go to work, you get a paycheck. That's called reinforcement. And I use that exact same reinforcement with my kids in a clinic, right? And so you can still utilize the different tools and the strategies and things like that. You don't necessarily need a provider or anything like that. That's the whole point of, well, that's a big part of what I do, at least as a practitioner. All of my parents, my entire caseload, I meet with every parent at least once a month, more often if they want to do parent training or parent consultation. And so I'm teaching them exactly what I'm doing so that they can implement the exact same things at home. I'm telling them, like, this is what works for us. You phrase it like this, you show them this picture, and it all kind of falls together. And so in a way, you can still do the same things that your ABA provider is doing. But as far as an actual ABA therapy, I do think the CBT is a good idea.
Thank you. Okay, and Dr. Frizzell, this question is for you. So, how can we bring this conversation, awareness, and research in the public school system in our areas? Our areas have the least training, in my opinion.
So with this, the biggest thing that I always tell people is representation matters. So you have to be intentional about the work you're doing to seek out these individuals to do the work. Like you all found me, because I was like, wow, you found me. I'll be glad to talk because it's something I'm passionate about. And the reason why I said it, because I come from a small rural area where people are cookie cutter. And if you're different a little bit, you ostracize. So the more people learn about the differences of other people, it allows them to embrace them. So it requires intentionality and going up and just saying, hey, just because somebody does something different doesn't mean something wrong with it. Maybe we need to adjust to making sure that they feel comfortable instead of making sure that we are comfortable. So I say the biggest thing is being intentional about seeking out those resources that will help validate you and also will show you that you're not alone in this process.
Thank you so much. And then another question for you, Dr. Frizzell. What helped you recognize that you might be autistic later in life?
So one of the key things that helped a lot was I worked with Dr. Brown, as I mentioned in my presentation, and we were very similar with a lot of things that we did. We both have sensory issues. I have issues with sound a lot. And we were in a work environment where they process out us having our doors closed, us being cut off without even paying attention to the fact that we have sensory issues. So that's one thing. But the thing that really let me know that something else is there, my supervisors at the time, it was two of them, they had a surprise meeting with me and they literally attacked me based on the way I communicated. And they focused more on how I said things instead of what I was saying and told me I was a difficult person. So they painted everything that I've done as a negative without recognizing, hey, maybe he's trying to deliver a message in a way that we aren't understanding. So when I got to the point where I said that my life didn't matter, that's when I started looking out for other things that I could be. Because I tried working in places where I wouldn't have a racism issue, or I wouldn't have it wouldn't be sexism or a whole bunch of obvious or ism that's present. But when I was in those environments and it still was an issue, I said there's something beneath the surface that people cannot see. So when I got the autism diagnosis, that helped me realize that that was the missing piece. That I just always did things differently, but that doesn't mean that's wrong. Society needs to learn to adapt to the way that we do things instead of us always adapting to society.
Yes, thank you so much. And then one last question for you, Dr. Frizzell. From your experience, what are some ways that Black adults on a one-on-one basis can support Black adults with autism in the family, at work, and socially to make everyday life less challenging?
So one of the key things that you have to do is to ensure that you are a safe space for this person. That's the key thing. And I know based on my experiences, the interactions I had, the individuals, especially growing up, I was bullied a lot because I was a different kid. So people had to make themselves, they had to prove themselves. I had to vet them to make sure they were going to be a safe space for me. And one of the key things that my sister exemplified, I love my sister to death, especially when I lost my house in a fire earlier this year. She made sure to show up for me, but allow me to recognize that, she's here to support me. And she reiterated that message because a lot of times we are traumatized because we are always mistreated because we do things differently. And the way we control that is by cutting ourselves off and making sure that we're safe. So you have to make sure that the environment is safe before that person to be able to open up to you and be willing, as I mentioned in my presentation, realize that they communicate differently. They may write, they may talk, they may do different things, but you have to be willing to make that adjustment for them instead of always trying to force them to do what makes you comfortable. So I think the combination of those things will help with the one-on-one and allow that trust to be built. So it's on both ends. It shouldn't be on just one person. But you have to show that you're a safe person that this person can trust, and they will open up to you and they will help build that one-on-one conversation.
Thank you so much. And Henry, I have a question for you. So, what are some common triggers you've noticed during haircuts, and how do you adjust your approach to support your clients?
Yes, good question. So a common trigger number one is trying to force them to do what they don't want to do, right? Which when they come in, they don't want a haircut. So just trying to force them to sit in a chair, wear a cape, cross their arms for 30 minutes and get a haircut is not going to work. That's a huge trigger. Number two is hearing no, right? A lot of kids on the spectrum don't like hearing no because they see that as kind of like rejection, or they see that as not being heard or being seen. So instead of saying no, you have to find ways to kind of just redirect them and just even distract them with some of the toys and the fidgets and the things that we have. But as far as sensory sensitivities, bright lights, LED lights, white lights can be a trigger. Loud sounds, of course, can be a trigger. And, even not having like a sense of predictability can be a trigger for a lot of my kids. So that's why before a lot of the work is done before the kids come in. So before the kids come in, I do a intake form. I do a 10-minute phone consultation with their parents or guardian. And then I have like a 10-minute introductory video showing them the space, introducing myself to the child, showing them what toys I'm gonna have on the space, what fidgets I'm gonna have on the space, and just the series of events that's gonna take place once they step in. So you're gonna come in and you're gonna be in this suite, and I'm gonna use these clippers. This is what the clipper is gonna sound like. If you don't like the clippers, we can try this, just to give them a sense of predictability when they come in here, and just having a sense of familiarity before they come in. So from my experience, I would say these are the top things.
Thank you so much. Those were some phenomenal questions that we had. And to our three speakers, all I can say is wow. Thank you so much. We are now going to have our first VP do our wrap up.
Thank you, Co-Chair Whittington. So, on behalf of our president, Dr. Katrina Pullum, myself as the first vice president of programs, and our entire committee, we extend our sincere gratitude to all of our amazing speakers. This has been such a great conversation. You guys are amazing. Thank you for your transparency, your expertise, and for helping us elevate this very critical conversation in our community. Thank you so much. We encourage everyone to stay connected with us through our website and our social media platforms. It's our QR code right here, with all of our all the ways that you can contact us, so that you can remain informed and engage in the work we are doing across health, education, and economic empowerment. We also value your feedback. So please take the time and share your feedback so we can continue to deliver programming that truly meets the needs of our community. Most importantly, our call to action is this: let today not be the end of awareness, but the beginning of action. Advocate in your circles, support families, seek out resources, and commit to being a voice that helps break stigma and build better understanding of the Black autistic perspective within the African American community. As we look ahead, we're excited to continue this momentum through our upcoming programs and initiatives designed to educate, empower, and to create some lasting impact. On April 15th, we have our domestic violence awareness empowerment program coming up. On April 23rd, we have our program on the unhoused and unheard. So please go to our website and register for that. And on May 3rd, we have our signature event. It's our NCBW Derby Days. This event funds our scholarship program. So we'd love for you guys to come out and have a little fun with us while we raise money. Actually, it's our party with a purpose, where we raise money to send young girls to school, to college. So together we can move from awareness to acceptance, and from acceptance to meaningful change. So thank you again for your time, your presence, and your commitment to this important work and to this important conversation. Thank you all so much again. Have a great evening.